Hi, I'm Penguin402, aka Taylor, and today I want to talk to you about the Oklahoma City bombing. So in Oklahoma, we've had several events happen. We've had the Tulsa race riot, we've had the Edmond postal shooting. Well, we've had the Tulsa race riot, the Girl Scout murders, and the uh, we've had the Edmond postal shooting. We've also had the Oklahoma City bombing, and the Oklahoma City bombing and Tulsa race riots are the only two out of those. Uh, Hold on, Tulsa race riot. Uh, yeah. Tulsa race riot, Girl Scouts, Edmond. Yeah, Tulsa race riot and the Oklahoma City bombing are the only two events out of the four that I mentioned that are actually talked about in schools. That are actually talked about in Oklahoma history, and they're actually in the Oklahoma history books. The Girl Scout murders, and they don't talk about the Edmond postal shooting because of how brutal it was, how brutal both of them were, and they don't want to scare teenagers. They don't want to scare high school students. They don't want them to do something similar to that, but it is a part of our history. But I want to talk about the Oklahoma City bombing. So to start, let me go to the beginning. So April 19th, 1994, there was a compound in Waco, Texas, which housed people that were anti-government. It was anti-government, and the police, FBI, all of them, they raided that place in Waco. They burned it down. They did all that. Well, Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols and a few other people were involved with this anti-government establishment clan, whatever you would call him. And Timothy McVeigh, out of all of his group of friends that he had, was the one that was most affected by it. He was the one that was most upset by it. So he didn't like what had happened, so he decided to get together with Terry Nichols and a few other people, and they decided they were going to construct this bomb and do this homemade bomb. So they did it. Well, a couple of the people, I don't know who their names were, they backed out of it. They backed out of it once they realized like where he was going to bomb it. But Terry Nichols was like, "No, let's do this. Let's do it. We're going to do this. Let's do it. Let's do it." And so Terry Nichols helped construct the bomb, and Timothy McVeigh was the one that went up. He went up the day before he bombed. He went up the day before, April 18th, 1995. Went up to the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. Went up there, and he went up to the floor. I don't know what floor it was. It may have been like second or third floor, somewhere around there. He went up to one of the floors where the daycare center was. He got on the elevator. From what I've heard, he got on the elevator, went up to the daycare, went and walked into the daycare and started talking with the daycare people, started talking with the daycare workers, and asking them all these questions about the daycare, asking them just all these like weird questions. And then the next day, he goes back to the federal building, Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building, and he drives. Oh, he's driving this Ryder truck, which a Ryder truck is like a U-Haul truck. It's basically a U-Haul truck, but owned by a different company. And that's where the bomb was. The bomb was in there, and he drove it and he parked it, and then he left, and he had a getaway vehicle. He had a getaway vehicle, and he just drove off. At 9:02, the bomb went off, and it blew up the front half of the building. Blew up the front half of the building. I believe 168 people, if I'm not mistaken, died, and of those 168 people that died, 19 were children. 19 of those were children. And what had happened was there was a daycare inside, and the daycare wasn't very big. The daycare wasn't I don't know how big the daycare was, but it wasn't even that old. It was like maybe like a couple weeks old. Like it had only been there for like a couple of weeks, from what I've heard. And so there were 19 children died. There were 5 children, as far as I know, that actually survived. One of them, 2 of the children were siblings. They were brother and sister. They were brother and sister, and the sister, she came out like fine. She was like fine. She just had to get like a bunch of like staples and stitches and all that. Like she had to get like 100 and some odd staples and stitches. But other than that, like she didn't have like any like real major injuries. But her brother, on the other hand, he came out, was not fine. They didn't know if he was gonna ever survive. They didn't know if he was gonna ever walk or even talk. And look, now he's walking, he's talking. Apparently he works from what I've heard, he's been working for Goodwill. And those children were the Denny kids. They were the Denny kids, and they were in the daycare, and they survived. Another kid, he was one of the younger ones. He was one of the younger kids that survived. He was like the youngest one, if I'm not mistaken. He was one of the youngest ones, and he survived. But he now has breathing problems. He has asthma and like all these other like breathing problems, and he can't play sports because of his asthma. He can't do certain things because of his asthma. And for last I checked, he was a sophomore in high school, wanting to graduate high school and be an engineer and study at MIT. Last I heard. Then there was another kid. He was one of the older ones that survived, and he now goes to he recently, in the last couple of years, he graduated from the University of Oklahoma, and I don't know, he was like about 4 or 5 years old when the bombing happened, so he doesn't really remember much from it, but he knows that he was lucky. He doesn't understand why him and the other 4 children from the daycare, why they survived. He doesn't understand why they survived, but he's trying to make it. He's trying to. It's for him. It's like a second lease on life. He's got a new lease on life. He's got a purpose now to live his life to the fullest, because you don't know, tomorrow might be your last day. Tomorrow today might be your last day, or tomorrow might be your last day. You don't know when life can end. And then the final one, he was a miracle. He was a miracle child. I like to call him the miracle child because he was found in the rubble by a police officer, an Oklahoma City police officer, and this police officer was responding to the bomb, and he saw a kid in the rubble, and I will be posting a link in the description when this airs. After this gets done, I'll find the video online, and I'll post it in the description below so you can find out more about this story. But basically what happened was the police officer found the boy. He picked him up, and he held him really tightly in his arms. He held him so tightly in his arms. And there was a paramedic that came by and was like, "Let me take the boy. Let me take him. I know what's best for him. I can help him. I can help him." And the police officer, he said the hardest decision that he's ever had to make in his life was turning his back on this boy's parents, because he didn't know if the boy was dead or alive, and he didn't want the boy's parents, to see their son looking like that, especially if he was dead. He didn't want that happening. So what ended up happening was he turned his back on his parents, and he didn't know if the boy was dead or alive. He didn't know, and it wasn't until the boy started crying that he knew that this boy was alive. And he held on to that boy and made sure that boy lived. And so a year after the bombing happened, they were still talking to each other. They were still like good friends. The boy played with the police officer's kids, and then they kind of lost touch. And then here recently, last couple of years, when it was the 20th anniversary of the bombing, they got back together. They met back up together, and the boy doesn't remember that day at all. He remembers nothing from it, but he still has like the scar on his face from it, and he knows that it happened, but he doesn't remember any of it. And the police officer's like, "That's good that he doesn't remember." But the police officer told him, he said, you were the only good that came out of that day. You were the good that came out that day." And so I think that was like really nice, very sweet. And like the lady that owned the daycare, she got like a lot of death threats, a lot of threats from parents who lost their child due to the bombing. And they were complaining that like she knew that the bomb was going to go off. She knew that all this was going to happen. Why did she, why did she close the daycare down? Well, this daycare was in a federal building. She can't close it down herself. It's the federal government shuts it down. The federal government's the one that tells her when to shut it down, when to open it. She had no control over it. And so a lot of them took her to court. A lot of those parents took her to court and sued her, but they didn't win. They didn't win anything because they had no case. But she understands like why the parents were upset. She understands like why they were upset, but she just doesn't. They don't. It's just hard for her. It's hard for her to talk about it. Like it's just hard that it's just sad that they did that. And like one thing that like happened as a result of that bombing, two out of the 19 kids that died, their names were Chase and Colton Chase and Colton, I think that's what their names were. And their mom had like their mom found out that they had died in the bombing. Their mom was like, I almost like it was my birthday. Wasn't gonna take him in, but then I decided I was just gonna take him in for a couple of hours and then go and run some errands and then come back and pick him up, and I didn't get to do that. But something in her gut told her not to take him that day, but she like decided not to listen, and she decided to take him in anyways, and they ended up dying. Well, as a result of their death, she had 2 more kids after that, and she swore like after she had her 2 boys, she swore she would never have kids. Like she was like, I'm not gonna have kids. She didn't even want to have kids after that. But it wasn't until they died. It wasn't until like years after they died that she had like 2 more kids. She had 2 more kids, and she doesn't understand like why they died. Like, but she doesn't really understand like why they had to die. But like she's like, if they would have lived, I would have had my 2 other kids that I have now. And like a lot of people have heard her story. They heard her story, and they said, and they've named their kids after these 2 boys. And I think that's amazing that these boys are being honored by people that they didn't even know, by people that have never even met them, that they never even met. And I think it's a beautiful thing. And every year, this lady goes to, on the anniversary, they go to the Oklahoma City National Memorial and Museum, and they read off the 2 boys' names, and they do it together as a family, and I think that's amazing. And there's another story I recently heard about this. and I didn't know about it until here recently. There was a lady, she was 8 months pregnant. 8 months pregnant when the bombing took place. She was never in the building, but her husband was in the building. And her husband died. And a month after the bombing happened, she had her baby. That baby will never get to know her dad because she had a girl. That baby will never get to know her own dad. That's the sad part about it, is that child will never get to know her dad. And apparently the lady was like, she looks just like him, looks so much like him, and it's sad that like she had to go through that. And like I believe she said that was their first child that they were having together. It was their first child, and that's sad. That's sad that happened. And like there was like another like lady, her grandsons died in the bombing as well. They were in the daycare, and they died as well. And it's so sad that like all of this has happened, but they've been able to persevere. And Chase and Colton's mom, I forgot to mention this, their mom, she's now becoming an advocate for things like this. And like she wrote a book about it. She wrote a book about what had happened and about her 2 sons that died. And she went to a local jail, and she talked with some of the inmates in there, and she shared her story with them. And they were so moved by her story that they were like, when I get out of here, I'm gonna do good, do some good in the world, because I see how you've been inflicted with this tragedy. You've been inflicted with this tragedy, and yet you've been able to stay so positive. No, that wasn't. Sorry. I'm thinking of someone else. I'm thinking of the Sandy Hook Elementary shooting. Sorry, that's not what happened, but it was a Sandy Hook shooting. Ignore everything I said. That was a Sandy Hook shootings. But but it's kind of hard hearing about like what happened to those children, what happened that day. And it was the largest it was the largest attack on American soil by an American. It was the largest terrorist attack by an American ever. Like 9/11, yes, 9/11 happened, and my thoughts and prayers are with all the victims and their families that were involved with 9/11. My thoughts and prayers are with you on this tragic day. But 9/11 wasn't. It was a terrorist attack, but it wasn't by an American. It was by people out of the country, from out of the country. They weren't from America. They were from some other country. And so Oklahoma City bombing was done by Timothy McVeigh. And how they caught him, this is a story that like I'm like, I can't believe they caught him that fast. He was driving down the highway, and he was I don't remember exactly where he was, but the Oklahoma Highway Patrolman, there was a Oklahoma Highway Patrolman that came by, that drove by and stopped him because he didn't have a license plate, he didn't have a license plate on the back of his car. Because in Oklahoma, other states do this, but Oklahoma doesn't do it. And states like, in other states, you have a license plate on the front of your car and on the back of your car. In Oklahoma, we just have a license plate on the back of our car. We don't have a license plate on the front of our car, which I think is cool. I think it's cool that we have that. We're the only state that does that. But we had, but he didn't have a license plate on the back of his car. And so the highway patrolman stopped him, Oklahoma highway patrolman stopped him, and and Timothy McVeigh was having like asking like these strange questions, like asking about the patrolman's gun and like how fast he could pull it out, how like what type of gun it was, like what bullets what bullets were in it, asking like these weird questions about his gun. So the guy took him in, like the highway patrolman took him in, and they booked him, and then it wasn't until like 3 days later that they realized, because before they booked him in, Timothy McVeigh was could hear on the guy's radio thing, could hear someone radioing in that there was a bomb, that they needed any and all patrol cars out in Oklahoma City because there was a bomb. Well, Timothy McVeigh was acting like he didn't know what had happened. He was acting like he didn't know what was happening, what was going on. And then so the highway patrolman didn't think much of it because Timothy McVeigh didn't have a radio. Like his radio was out of the car. Like he didn't have a radio in the car. Like the radio was where the hole where the radio was supposed to be, or the part of the car where the radio was supposed to be was taken out. It was completely, there was a hole there. There was nothing there. So he didn't think much of it. He was like, this guy doesn't have a radio. He doesn't know what's going on. So he didn't think much of it. It wasn't until like 3 days later that they realized that he was the one that did it. And then they finally caught Terry Nichols, and Terry Nichols is in jail. He's in a prison, an underground prison. As far as I know, if he's in an underground prison, and he's in there for life without parole. He's not able to get parole. He's in there for life. And they only put the dangerous people in this prison, like the most dangerous people in this prison. And it's sad. Like I mean Terry Nichols was involved, and he should be punished. He should be punished for what he did. And Timothy McVeigh, on the other hand, he wanted to be executed. He wanted to be executed. He didn't want to spend time in jail. And I thought, when I heard about this, I'm like, why couldn't he have just spent time in jail? Let him think about what he did, all those children that died. And my mom kind of agrees with me that he should have brought in jail for a while. But then at the same time, you're having to pay taxes on him for being in jail, and no one wants to pay taxes on him. But he wanted to be executed by lethal injection, and I don't think that he should have been executed by lethal injection. I don't think so, because we gave him everything that he wanted. No, I think what should have happened is they should have put him in a building. They should have built a building that looked similar to the federal building, the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. Put it in the middle of nowhere so no one could get hurt but him, and plant a bomb right next to like park a truck nearby the building, and blow it up like that truck, like what happened with that building with the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. Have that happen and have him die that way. Me and my mom agree with this. Like he should have been killed the same way that he killed those 168 people. That's how he should have died. And that's the same way my mom also agrees with the fact that like there are people that are on death row. There are a lot of people on death row, and I feel like me and my mom both feel like people that are on death row need to be, they need to get killed the same way that they killed their victims. That's how they should be killed. They shouldn't be killed by lethal injection. They should get killed the way that they killed their victims. And the one lady, her two grandsons died in the Oklahoma City bombing. They were in the daycare. She says justice would be justice is not served. It will never be served. The only way that it would ever be served is if Timothy McVeigh is killed by lethal injection. If he's killed, and our loved ones get to come back, that's the only way that justice would ever be served. And I have to agree. That's the only way that it'll ever be served. And like apparently, what happened was when someone gets killed by lethal, when someone's on death row and they go and get killed by lethal injection or however they decide to kill them, what they end up doing is they allow the victim's family to go to the execution. They allow them to go to the execution. Then the person that's being executed, they allow like their family to come and like friends, and they let anyone that they want to come to this ceremony, not ceremony, but come to this execution. Well, they couldn't fit all 168 of those victims' families in that room. They couldn't fit all of them in there. So what they did was they had some people, some of the victims families showed up in Indiana where he was being executed. They showed up there. Or it wasn't Indiana. It was some prison where he was at. Wherever prison that he was at. They had him, they showed up there for the execution, and then the ones that couldn't make it because the place wasn't big enough for them to show up, they had a closed circuit TV just for the victims' families in Oklahoma City. And they watched it. They sat and watched his execution. And it's a tragic thing, but a lot of goodness came out of it. Like, for one, every year Oklahoma City has their own marathon that they do in honor of the victims. And every year they go to on the anniversary of the bombing, they go to the Oklahoma City National Memorial Museum, and they read off names of the victims that were killed. Then and that's how they celebrate them. That's how they honor them. And on the 20th anniversary, former President Bill Clinton, he was there. He was there that day. He was there at the memorial honoring those victims. And it's just amazing. I've been to the National Memorial and the museum, and it will change your life. If there's one place in Oklahoma City that I recommend anyone going to if they're ever going to Oklahoma City, that is the one place I highly recommend you going to, because they not only talk about the Oklahoma City bombing, but they also talk about terrorism. And it's a moving place. There's one room that made me want to cry so badly, but I'm not going to talk about it because I'm not going to spoil it. But let's just say that one item was in that room that caused me to want to cry. Caused me to want to cry, and I didn't think that one item could make me want to cry. But it's just a sad place. But then you walk outside. When you walk into the museum, you go through the memorial part. You go through the memorial section, and there's these chairs lined up, and the tall chairs, the big chairs, tall chairs, are all the adults. The little chairs represent the children that died. And there's 168 chairs that are lined up, and with the names of each victim. And it's an incredible place. And it's such a calm place. It's so calm and peaceful there. It's very peaceful there and calm. And I think they did an amazing job on that memorial. I think they did it the best way possible. And there's also a tree there. There's a tree there. You're probably thinking, what's the tree have to do with this? Well, when the bomb happened, there was a tree. It was a baby tree. It wasn't even that old. The tree wasn't even that old, and it was in the parking lot. Well, this tree was like just in the parking lot. It wasn't. No one really cared about this tree. It wasn't even that big of a deal. But when the bomb happened, that tree was the only thing that survived. That like truly survived. That besides the five children and quite a few of the adults that survived that day. But the tree was still standing, and they call it the survivor tree. They call it the survivor tree because it survived, and it's still around today. They still have it today, and it's an incredible story. And I can't believe a tree like that survived. It survived the impact of it. And so if there's any place in Oklahoma City that I would highly recommend going, it's the Oklahoma City National Memorial Museum. I want to go back, and you're probably thinking, why do you want to go back? Because you've already been. They every so often they add new stuff in. They have new things in. And here recently they added the car that Timothy McVeigh was captured in. His getaway car. They recently put that in the museum. And it's amazing. It's amazing to see that place. It's amazing. It's an amazing feeling to go there and know that those. It's just amazing being there and seeing all those things that are in that museum, and it's one that I highly recommend you going to. If you're ever in the Oklahoma City area, go to the museum. It will change your life. It will not only change your life, but it'll make you rethink your life, and just make you realize that, like, hey, life is too short. I need to tell the people that I love them before it's too late. And like we always say, like you always tell your kids when you drop them off at daycare, you always say, I'll see you later. I'll see you later. Well, those parents that dropped their kids off that day never saw their kids later. They did, but not when they were alive. Not when the kids were alive. And it's sad that like all those people had to die, and it's just I can't imagine like why he would do that. And one quick story is after that happened, after the bombing happened, that anti-government group, like Klan, whatever you would call them, they disbanded. They dispersed. They didn't want any part of it anymore. They were sick and tired of it because they realized that he bombed the federal building in Oklahoma City. He bombed the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. He bombed it. And there were children involved. They were like, it's one thing to hate your government and to bomb a federal building, but it's a whole other different thing when you bomb a building with children in it. They didn't want to be a part of it. That was they drew the line at children. They drew the line at children, which I'm so happy that they did. Because those children didn't ask for it. They didn't ask for that to happen. And the fact that it did happen is crazy. And it's sad. And one last final thing I want to say is Garth Brooks did a song called The Change. And the video is all about the Oklahoma City bombing. And it shows like clips from the Oklahoma City bombing. And one of the clips, I talked about the boy that lived, that he was a miracle. He was a miracle baby, miracle kid. The police officer was holding him tightly. That they actually show that clip. They show that. They show the guy the officer holding the boy. They show him. They also show three nurses running. and I believe it was a girl, lady in the, I believe she was wearing a white coat and like blue scrubs, if I'm not mistaken. She actually died. She actually died saving people. There were a lot of people that died saving people, but then there were people that died because they were in the building, and there were people that got either injured or died that weren't even in the building, that were in nearby buildings because of how big the blast was. And a lot of people are saying, like, a lot of people are calling it a conspiracy theory. They're saying, oh, there was another bomb inside. There was another bomb inside. That no bomb like that could happen. They tested it, and there was no way a bomb could do that much damage. And I'm like, but it happened. How can you call it something like that a conspiracy theory? How can you call it that? 168 people died that day. 19 of those 168 people that died that day were children. Children that didn't know right from wrong. Children that thought adults would make everything better. Children that didn't know that there were bad people in the world. Children that were just starting their lives out. Children that were dreaming to be police officers, firefighters, teachers. Children that didn't know right from wrong. And to say that it was a conspiracy theory is crazy. And those people need some serious help. That bomb did blow up the Alfred P. Murrah building. You know how I know that? It's because how they knew that it was a U-Haul type truck is they saw the sign on the U-Haul. They saw, I mean, not on the U-Haul. They saw the sign in the rubble. They saw the remnants of that truck on the in the rubble. That's what they saw. They saw the remnants of the truck in the rubble. That's how they knew. That's how they knew that had done that. There were a lot of things that happened that day. A lot of questions. Why this had to happen. A lot of things were going through a lot of people's heads that day. And no one deserved to die that way. They don't. They didn't. No, none of that deserved to happen, but it happened. And it's a part of my state's history. And I really hope that we can learn something from this. I really do. I hope that we can learn something from this. And because of this bombing, we've now established the Oklahoma Standard in Oklahoma, which is basically where we learn to treat people with kindness, respect, and we kind of, in Oklahoma, if you've ever been to Oklahoma, you kind of get this like kind of weird sense about us. Like you kind of have this like weird sense, like if you're not from Oklahoma, people, they, no matter where you go, they'll kind of look at you and they'll kind of like think twice before talking to you, or think twice. Like we're really cautious about people. We're really cautious because we're cautious about making friends with people because you don't know what type of person they are. We're very hard with trusting. Like we have a hard time trusting people, and it's because of the bombing. The bombing changed Oklahoma forever, and I hope one day we will live in a world where bombings don't happen, where it's peace, where there's peace. But I don't see that happening. I hope that we can move past all of this. I hope that we can keep those victims' memories alive, and that we can, and that they are going to live in our hearts forever. And to those families and to the victims and their families, my thoughts and prayers are with you. I wasn't alive when this happened. This was less than a year before I was born. When this happened like less than a year before I was born, but I've heard so many stories about this. I've done my research on it, and to know that this happened is just such a tragedy. One that should never be forgotten. Oklahomans never forget this tragedy. So that's all I have for you today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And hit that notification bell down there, because next week, if I'm not mistaken, I am going to be doing next week I would be doing Katy Perry versus Taylor Swift. I'm going to be talking about them and talking about basically kind of like a debate, but there's no one's here to debate with me, but it's going to be kind of like a it's going to be basically all about I can't explain it, but it's just going to be like me giving like a comparison of like the two and differences between the two, and I'm going to let you guys decide who you think is better, Katy Perry or Taylor Swift. So, and I will post links in the description below when this video is uploaded, when this video is put up, for that you can check out, videos that you can check out on if you want to learn more about the Oklahoma City bombing. So look out for that. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Bye!